Good morning. This is a departure for me. I usually do book reviews and samples of my own work, but I want to review the Interrogation of Chris Watts. This is a very interesting interrogation because it actually answers one of the big unanswered questions to come out of this case, which was, what was his plan? What was he actually trying to do here? Because what we're seeing doesn't make any sense. There's tens of hours of raw footage, body cams, prison interviews, police interrogations, CCTV. It doesn't all add up. Did he really think this plan was going to work? And what was his plan? Because this doesn't seem like people are actually saying he didn't have a plan. That's how shoddy this plan turned out to be. Just a complete epic fail, a bad American Idol audition. So the interesting thing about it is, if you go through all of the evidence that's available, the 2,000-page discovery, the tens of hours of raw footage, and then you come back and watch the interrogation, you see that Chris, even though he would never directly admit what his real intentions were and what he was thinking about those intentions and how he felt about pulling them off, he actually gave away his entire plan in the interrogation. The detectives did a great job of keeping him talking, much longer than he would have just on his own. And he has a certain lying style where he can say something that he believes is true, but that it will come off as what he thinks sounds like an innocent man to others. So what I want to do is just go through the entire interrogation and point out all of the instances where he gave his plan away. Because one of the sickening things, other than the crime itself, is how the person who knows the most about it is a compulsive and pathological liar who his main focus is protecting his own self-image, making sure everyone thinks he's just a nice guy, and makes his victims look worse than they really are. So I want to expose this plan that was exposed by himself in his own words, and I want to give a voice to the victims, because when you care about someone, you torment yourself over not knowing what happened to them, and to have history rewritten by the criminal has got to be one of the biggest tragedies to being the victim of a crime. There's also at least 3 unsung heroes that I want to point out. There are plenty of heroes. There are the obvious heroes, the detectives, the friends and family who helped bring the criminal to justice. And there's the heroes who are kind of on the side, the ancillary heroes who everyone says they should get more credit for that. They're heroes too, but there's at least 3 that I don't think have been mentioned, at least in anything I've seen, as being heroes to throw a wrench in Chris's horrific plan. So I'm looking forward to giving them credit, getting to that part. My introduction to this case was, I was just scrolling through and saw the headlines when it was still an open case, and I'll never forget my first impression as I saw the family photo of them on the porch and saw the headline, "Pregnant mother and 2 daughters missing. Father asks for them to come home." My first thought was, who's that creepy guy in the picture? Is he the weird uncle who the father suspects of making the wife and kids disappear? And then I just went on with my day because it's another moron. It's another open case. Who cares? One of many. Going to see him every day. And as the headlines kept coming out, I noticed, oh, that creepy guy was the father? He didn't look like he belonged there. Oh, well, it makes sense that he was the one responsible. And another moron doing something stupid. Moving on. And then as the weeks went on, why is this case getting so much attention? I don't get it. Until the prison interview came out. And around that time, I was listening to a lot of professional wrestling podcasts who were talking about Chris Benoit, who did a similar crime, murdered his wife and son and then himself. And that's been one of the big unanswered questions in the wrestling world is why did Chris Benoit do that? We'll never know because he killed himself. So this prison interview's out. I've been wondering what the big deal is. And maybe this will give an insight into what Chris Benoit did, because Chris Watts did something similar, except he's still alive and apparently spent 4.5 hours talking about it and revealing what he did and why. And I will never forgive this son of a bitch for making me feel sympathy for him, because I came out of listening to that prison interview the first time with no other knowledge of the case. This is my first exposure to the case. I halfway bought his story. And a lot of that credit goes to the detectives who were interviewing him because they were pretending to be his best friend. They catch criminals for a living, and they were siding up with him saying, "Hey, buddy, we don't want to take you to a dark place tonight." "Ha ha, Chris, you're so funny." And acting like, oh, he's a special case. We don't deal with cases like this. And I halfway bought it. But some things didn't just make sense when I came out of that. I was like, wait a minute. If he really was who he's saying he is, he would have been more curious about this thing. He would have asked about this, and he would have been talking more about that if he really was this devastated father who went temporarily insane and did something he now just regrets with total anguish. So I listened to it again, and I came away with the impression of, this guy's just a liar. Why did I believe this guy? Oh my God, I feel so betrayed and disgusted. I can't believe I felt sympathy for this guy. Maybe feel sympathy for him when he was a kid before he turned into what he is now, but this guy. So then I wanted to, that's when I delved into all of the raw footage that's available to see the events that they were talking about, where he came home and the police were there, and just everything else that's available, the tens of hours of footage. And I went into tens of hours of YouTubers analyzing the footage. And there was a lot of good coverage of it. And then when I came back to the interrogation, that's when I realized that this sniveling, frantic moron who's been skipping around trying to act like an innocent man and is showing himself to be guilty, this plan was so great in his mind, and he had such high hopes and thought about it so much for so long, that not only did the idea bulb go over his head actually conformed to the shape of an idea bulb. That's why you see it when you look at his mugshot. It looks like a light bulb, and if you see him in the interrogation footage from the side, he looks like an idea bulb head. So the seeds of this we'll go over, because they all get revealed by the detectives who pull it out of him. They get him to keep talking, and he reveals all this stuff in his lying style. He thinks he's covering it up, and maybe not everyone would notice these things, and I would just want to go through and paint the whole picture of what his plan actually was, how it changed, and we all see the results of it, unfortunately. But he's right where he belongs. So at least there's that. It makes it easier to get through knowing where he ends up. Chris starts off with his written statement, and we see him repeating the same details over and over again. There's been a lot of comments that he's the Forrest Gump of murderers, and that's kind of true, because where Forrest had a low IQ but a high emotional intelligence, Chris is the inverse of that. He does have a higher than average IQ, in that you see he's able to hold all these lies in his head and remember them for a long time, and he keeps repeating them because he has them memorized. A lower IQ liar would probably be forgetting stuff, and well, Chris does do a lot of mumbling and stuttering and lisping, but he does hold a lot of information in his head. However, I think he could qualify with the state for his emotional intelligence, because this guy is clueless as far as how this stuff is going to look when he's saying it the way he says it to people who are listening, who are normal, who have normal emotional intelligence. He only goes by what he's seeing the person in front of him responding. He goes by, okay, this person is happy and giving me positive feedback, so I'm doing it right. When you can see it with Graham when he plays good cop and bad cop, when Chris is getting positive feedback, he knows, okay, I'm doing good, I can keep going. But when Graham challenges him and is giving him negativity, that's when Chris starts going, and he has to start rethinking it. I got to do something different, because he doesn't understand how people are really thinking about what he's doing. And that is one of the big monkey wrenches thrown into his plan. So he's reciting the same details that he will repeat and already has repeated, like Rain Man. And the first detail he goes into is a sign of what he thought would work for him because of his low EQ. He mentions the doorbell camera, how it caught Shanann coming up after her best friend dropped her off, but that the neighbor Nate's camera did not catch her. I think he was planning on these little errors of technology. He was thinking people were just going to buy what he was saying, because they always have. That's why I said it's like a bad American Idol audition coming into this. All of his friends and family have been giving him so much positivity throughout his whole life that they've convinced him that they all think he's just this nice guy, and they really did, because that's how he's been acting. That's the mask he's been holding up for everybody, and they've all been showing him to his face, that's what we think of you. He's just this nice family man. So when he says, yeah, it's kind of odd, the doorbell must be tripping, someone's been going around trying to shimmy the locks with a screwdriver. It's weird that the doorbell camera caught her, but the neighbor's camera didn't catch her. He's expecting that this will fill in his plot holes, that, oh, it must have been an error of technology, I guess. I'm getting these notifications that are inaccurate, and one camera caught her and the other one didn't. He's expecting that will work, because it always has for him, because people to their face are giving him positive reinforcement and just accepting it and moving on. Whereas detectives are going to pry into those holes. And these detectives do a great job. Next, we see the first seed of what led to Chris's awful plan. He mentions Shanann not responding to him is normal. That's why he didn't call 911. I can see years ago Shanann doing this, because, as Chris says, if she doesn't get back to me, that's normal. She always gets back to her coworkers and her friends. She responds to them right away. But to me, she doesn't get back to me. She'll see me later. And that's the facade that he's portraying to the world, because that's what works for him and that's what gets him the positive feedback. But we know, and we can tell this by the way he's saying it and by the evidence that's available, this really bothered Chris. He's a covert narcissist, and for Shanann to put her friends and coworkers, her people, ahead of him was deeply enraging to Chris. And he may have acted in the time like he was cool with it, and showing everyone that he was cool with it the same way that he's showing Graham Coder that he's cool with it. Yeah, she doesn't get back to me, that's fine. But I bet that got him going into an inner rage, where a person who legitimately cares for someone else, if their loved one is not getting back to them, they say, what the heck? Something could be happening to you now, and you're not getting back to me, and I don't even know about it. You can be in trouble, and I wouldn't know about it. I wouldn't be able to do anything about it. But Chris is just saying, yeah, it's cool if she doesn't get back to me. And he's thinking, you could go missing, and I could pretend that you never get back to me. So if you went missing, that would be okay, and everyone would just know that you never get back to me, and everyone would believe me because they all think I'm a nice guy. So that's kind of the difference between a normal person and how a covert narcissist sociopath thinks. One person is worried that the loved one is not getting back to them, and the other one is saying, this is a way I can take advantage of you. Okay, this is getting kind of long, so I think I'm going to have to cut it off there and go into the first unexpected monkey wrench getting thrown into Chris's plan in the next video. So I guess I'll see you next time and cut it off there.